The great hall of the Lyran Imperial Palace was built to make visitors feel small. Its ceiling rose like a frozen sky, formed from crystal panels that glowed with soft blue light. Massive pillars shaped like ancient alien beasts lined both sides of the hall. Between them stood nobles, generals, scientists, and diplomats from dozens of worlds. Their clothes shimmered with rare metals and living fabrics. Their voices were low but sharp, filled with pride and quiet judgment. This gathering was important. Very important. The Queen of Lyria sat upon the elevated throne at the far end of the hall. She was tall, elegant, and calm, her silver eyes watching everything. Beside her stood guards in ceremonial armor, unmoving as statues. This was a meeting to decide future alliances, trade routes, and military balance across nearby systems. Humans were not expected to matter here. Most of the nobles believed humanity was still young, loud, and reckless, useful sometimes, dangerous often, but never important enough to change the fate of empires. That belief was about to break. At the Queen's right side, seated on a smaller platform, was the youngest royal, Princess Illyra. She was tiny compared to others of her kind. Her frame was delicate, her limbs slender, her wings folded tightly against her back. Many thought she was fragile, some thought she was weak. Few ever listened when she spoke. Illyra usually stayed quiet during gatherings like this. The noise, the lights, the presence of so many powerful beings made her uncomfortable. Today was no different. Until the doors opened, a deep tone echoed through the hall as the massive entrance doors slowly parted. All conversation faded as tradition demanded silence for arriving guests. A small diplomatic group entered, envoys from a minor border coalition. At their center walked a single human. He wore a simple, dark uniform. No armor, no weapons visible, no symbols of rank that impressed the alien eye. His hair was short, his posture straight but relaxed. He walked like someone who had learned long ago how not to draw attention. To everyone else, he was unremarkable. To Illyra, the world stopped, her breath caught. Her hands began to shake. The sound of the hall faded, replaced by a memory of fire, cold metal, and screaming alarms. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. She felt small again. Lost again. And then, safe. Her eyes locked onto the human as if pulled by an invisible thread. Tears welled without warning. She leaned toward her mother, her voice barely more than air. "Mom, that's him." The words were soft. The effect was not. The Queen's body stiffened instantly. Her silver eyes widened just a fraction, enough that her guards noticed. Around the hall, several nobles heard the whisper. Confusion spread like a ripple. The entire palace fell into shocked silence. The human stopped walking. He had not heard the words, but he felt the sudden shift. Hundreds of alien eyes turned toward him. Some curious, some hostile, some afraid. The Queen raised one hand. "Bring the human forward," she said calmly. The command carried authority that could not be ignored. The human stepped ahead of his group, alone now, boots echoing against the polished floor. He stopped at the center of the hall and lowered his head slightly in respect. "I am Lieutenant Daniel Reyes, Earth Defense Forces," he said in clear, steady galactic standard. "Assigned escort and observer. I mean no offense by my presence." Murmurs broke out. A noble with long curved horns scoffed. "A human, Lieutenant? Why is such a low-ranking creature allowed inside this hall?" Another laughed softly. "Perhaps the Queen enjoys surprises." Illyra shrank back, fear returning. Her wings trembled. Daniel did not look up at the throne. He had learned long ago that staring at royalty rarely ended well. The Queen studied him in silence. Then she spoke again. "Princess Illyra," she said gently, "tell me what you mean." All eyes turned to the tiny princess. Her throat felt tight. Speaking in front of so many terrified her. but the human was there. He was real. And she remembered. He saved me, Alira said, her voice shaking but clear. A long time ago. When my ship was destroyed. The hall erupted. That is impossible. Human records show no such event. The princess was declared lost due to system failure, not enemy action. Alira flinched at every word. The queen raised her hand again, and silence returned. She looked down at Daniel. Do you recognize my daughter? Daniel hesitated. Slowly, he raised his head, and then he froze. His eyes widened just a little. You, he whispered, before catching himself. He straightened. Yes, Your Majesty. I recognize her. Gasps filled the hall. The queen's gaze sharpened. Explain. Daniel took a breath. His voice was quiet, respectful, and firm. 15 cycles ago, he said, during a classified patrol near the Charon Drift, my unit detected a destroyed civilian craft. Official orders were to ignore it. The zone was unstable. Rescue probability was near 0. He paused. I disobeyed. Whispers turned into stunned silence. I entered the wreckage, Daniel continued. There was one survivor. Small, injured, terrified. I carried her out before the field collapsed. Alira's eyes filled with tears. She kept asking if she was going to be eaten, Daniel said softly. I told her humans don't eat people who are scared. A strange sound filled the hall. Laughter? No. It was disbelief cracking. A general stepped forward. That incident was erased, classified as sensor error. Daniel nodded. Yes. I was ordered not to speak of it. The queen stood. The movement alone made the room tremble. For 15 cycles, she said slowly, my daughter woke from nightmares, remembering a faceless monster that saved her, and a voice that promised she would not be hurt. She descended the steps of the throne, stopping only a few meters from Daniel. And now that voice stands in my hall. Daniel lowered his head again. I didn't know who she was. I only knew she was alone. The queen turned back to the nobles. You may leave, she said coldly. This gathering is concluded. Protests erupted instantly. This is outrageous. You dismiss us for a human? The queen's eyes flashed. I dismiss you because you forgot what honor looks like. One by one, the hall emptied. Guards sealed the doors. Only the queen, the princess, Daniel, and a few trusted advisors remained. Alira stepped down from her platform. She walked slowly toward Daniel. Each step felt heavy, but her fear faded with every meter. When she stood before him, she looked up. You came back, she whispered. Daniel knelt so he was at her level. I said I would, he replied. Alira smiled through tears. Outside the sealed hall, whispers spread through the palace like fire. A human had saved the princess, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The chamber was smaller than the great hall, but its walls carried more weight. Ancient symbols glowed faintly along curved stone panels. This was the inner council room, where secrets were spoken and truths were tested. Only a few beings in the Empire were allowed inside. Daniel stood near the center, hands relaxed at his sides. He did not move. He did not speak unless spoken to. Years of military discipline kept him calm, but inside, his thoughts were sharp and careful. He knew this moment mattered. Princess Alira sat beside her mother on a low seat, her feet not even touching the floor. She stayed close to the queen, but her eyes never left Daniel. The queen studied them both. You will tell me everything, she said at last. Not what was written in reports, not what was erased. I want the truth. Daniel nodded once. Yes, Your Majesty. She gestured to a tall alien with pale skin and multiple glowing eyes. Archivist. Unlock the sealed records from the Karan Drift incident. The archivist hesitated. Those files are forbidden. Even to me? The Queen asked calmly. The archivist bowed deeply. At once. A holographic display rose from the floor. Static flickered. Then fragments of data appeared. Broken images, corrupted audio, missing timestamps. Daniel looked at the display. His jaw tightened. That's how it was left, he said quietly. Incomplete. On purpose. The Queen's fingers curled slightly. Begin. Daniel took a breath and started from the beginning. His unit had been assigned to patrol the edge of unstable space. Not for rescue. Not for diplomacy. It was a quiet mission meant to watch and report nothing. Then the distress signal appeared. Weak. Fragmented. Almost impossible to detect. They told us it was a sensor ghost, Daniel said. A false echo caused by the drift. Alira's wings trembled. I heard her voice, Daniel continued. Not through instruments, through instinct. Something was wrong. He explained how he argued with his commander, how protocol demanded they leave, how rescue attempts in that region often killed everyone involved. And you disobeyed? The Queen said, yes. There was no pride in his voice. No regret, either. I took a shuttle. Went alone. I knew if I asked again, they'd lock me down. The hologram shifted. A cracked image appeared. Twisted metal floating in darkness, sparks drifting like dying stars. That was her transport, Daniel said. Or what was left of it. Alira squeezed her hands together. The memory was painful, but she did not look away. Daniel described the silence inside the wreck, the freezing air, the failing lights. The way he had almost missed her because she was so small. She was trapped behind a bent support beam, he said. Crying. She thought I was a predator. Alira nodded slowly. I thought. Humans ate small aliens. A strange, soft sound escaped the Queen's throat. Not laughter, not anger, something between sorrow and disbelief. I told her I wouldn't hurt her, Daniel said. I promised I'd get her out. The hologram showed a warning alert. Structural collapse imminent. I barely made it, Daniel said. The shuttle was damaged. I had to seal her inside a survival pod and launch it toward the nearest safe corridor. The archivist zoomed in. A single data line appeared. Life pod launched. One occupant. Species unknown. Alira's eyes widened. I remember the pod, she whispered. I thought I was alone again. Daniel shook his head. You weren't. I tracked it until my systems failed. The Queen turned sharply to the archivist. Why was this erased? The archivist hesitated, then spoke carefully. Because it did not fit strategic outcome projections. A human saving a royal unknown would have changed interspecies balance. By lying, the Queen said coldly. Yes, the archivist replied. Silence filled the chamber. The Queen stood and walked slowly to the hologram. She stared at the corrupted data, then at Daniel. You saved my daughter, she said, and you were punished for it. Daniel shrugged slightly. I was reassigned, demoted, told to forget. And you did not come forward when she was found? Daniel met her gaze. I didn't know who she was, and by the time I suspected, the files were sealed. I thought speaking would only cause harm. The Queen studied him for a long moment. You chose silence to protect others, she said, even when it cost you. Alira suddenly stood. She stepped forward, small hands clenched. He stayed with me, she said. Before the pod launched, he talked to me. He told me stories. Daniel smiled faintly. About Earth, oceans, and dogs. They helped me not be scared, Illyra said. The Queen closed her eyes briefly. Then she turned to her advisors. What else was erased? She asked. The archivist hesitated again, then answered. The launch of the pod altered drift currents. It destabilized a hostile fleet preparing an ambush near Lyria's border. The room went still. Daniel frowned. I didn't know that. Because you weren't meant to, the archivist said. Your disobedience prevented a conflict that would have escalated into war. Illyra looked at Daniel, as if seeing him for the first time all over again. The Queen's voice was quiet, but it carried force. One human decision, one life saved, and an entire war avoided. She turned back to Daniel. You were never meant to be remembered, she said. But history does not always obey those who try to control it. A guard suddenly entered the chamber, bowing quickly. Your Majesty, he said. The council factions are gathering. They demand answers. The Queen's expression hardened. They will wait, she said. For once. She looked down at Illyra. Do you wish him to stay? Illyra did not hesitate. She nodded and moved closer to Daniel, her small hand gently holding the edge of his sleeve. Yes, she said. Please. The Queen looked at their hands. Then she nodded. Lieutenant Daniel Reyes, she said. You are under my protection until further notice. Daniel blinked. Your Majesty, this is not a reward, the Queen said. It is a responsibility. She stepped closer. You have shown what your species truly is, she said. Not through power, not through conquest, but through choice. Outside the chamber, alarms did not sound. No weapons fired. But something far more dangerous had begun. Across the palace, nobles whispered in fear and anger. Old beliefs cracked, ancient assumptions trembled. A tiny princess had recognized a human, and the truth, once buried, was awake again. The palace did not sleep that cycle. Corridors that were usually calm now carried fast footsteps and whispered arguments. Security drones floated lower than normal. Guards doubled at every major doorway. The truth revealed in the inner council room had spread faster than anyone expected. And not everyone welcomed it. Daniel was given temporary quarters near the royal wing. The room was plain by palace standards. Smooth stone walls, soft lighting, a single window looking out over the Capitol spires. It reminded him of military housing, simple, quiet. He stood near the window, hands behind his back, watching distant air traffic move like slow stars. He felt eyes on him. You are thinking too loudly, Illyra said softly. The tiny princess stood near the doorway, flanked by a single guard who stayed respectfully distant. Illyra's wings were half open, a sign she was nervous but curious. I didn't mean to disturb you, she added quickly. You didn't? Daniel said. You can come in. She stepped inside, looking around as if seeing the room through his eyes. It's small, she said. Daniel smiled. I'm used to smaller. She hesitated, then sat on the edge of a low seat. Her feet still did not touch the floor. Everyone is arguing, Illyra said. They say you should not be here. That happens a lot, Daniel replied calmly. Illyra looked up at him. Are you afraid? He thought for a moment. Not of them. She nodded, as if that answer made sense. Neither noticed the faint shift in the air outside the room. 3 levels above, in a maintenance corridor not marked on public maps, a shadow moved. The attacker had studied palace routines for years. They knew the guards trusted their own walls. They knew no one expected violence during political confusion. They also believed humans were weak. The intruder activated a silent pulse device, designed to stop a heart without leaving marks. Clean, efficient, untraceable. Below, Alira suddenly stiffened, her wings flared wide. Daniel reacted instantly. He did not know why his heart raced. He did not hear alarms. He did not sense danger through training. He sensed it through her. "Get behind me," he said. "What?" Alira began. The wall exploded inward, stone shattered. Energy sliced through the room in a thin, deadly line. Daniel moved without thought. He stepped between Alira and the blast, twisting his body, grabbing the nearest solid object, a metal support frame, and slammed it down as cover. The pulse device discharged again, striking the frame and scattering harmlessly. Guards shouted. Weapons activated. Alarms screamed to life. The attacker dropped from the broken wall, landing with inhuman grace, tall, armored, not of Lyria. "Move aside, human," the attacker hissed. "This does not concern you." Daniel did not move. "No," he said simply. The attacker laughed. "You think yourself a shield?" Daniel tightened his grip. The attacker lunged. What followed lasted less than 10 seconds. Daniel used the room, not strength. He kicked a chair into the attacker's knee, slammed the frame into their weapon arm, and drove them backward into the wall. When the attacker recovered and swung again, Daniel was already moving, ducking, striking, disabling. He did not kill. He pinned. By the time guards flooded the room, the attacker was on the ground, weapon shattered, joints locked in a way that caused pain but not permanent damage. Alira stood frozen, staring. Daniel knelt on the attacker's back, breathing steady. "It's over," he said to her, not turning around. The queen arrived moments later, her expression thunder itself. She took in the scene in one glance. "A direct strike inside my palace," she said coldly. "Explain." The attacker spat. "The human is a destabilizing variable. Remove him, and order returns." The queen's eyes burned. "You came for my daughter. She is the symbol," the attacker replied. "He is the infection." The queen looked at Daniel. Alira moved without thinking, and pressed herself against his side, gripping his sleeve with both hands. Gasps echoed through the room. The queen's gaze sharpened. "Remove the attacker," she commanded. "Alive!" As guards dragged the intruder away, advisors began speaking at once. "This proves our fears. Humans bring chaos. We must isolate him immediately." Daniel stood slowly. "If you want me gone," he said, calm and clear, "say it, but don't pretend this was my doing." The queen raised a hand. "Enough!" She approached Daniel and Alira. "Princess," she said gently, "are you harmed?" Alira shook her head. "He protected me." The queen already knew that. She turned to the advisors. "Observe carefully," she said. The attacker targeted a child. The human placed himself between danger and weakness without hesitation. She paused. "That is not chaos. That is character." An advisor stepped forward, voice tight. "Your Majesty, there is something else." He activated a scanner. Data flooded the air. "During the attack," the advisor continued, "the princess's biosigns synchronized with the human's nervous system. Heart rate, stress response, focus. The room went silent. "That is impossible," someone whispered. "Cross-species synchronization requires genetic compatibility." The queen looked at the data, then at Alira. "Alira," she said carefully, "do you feel different near him?" Alira nodded. "I feel steady, like I am not small." Daniel swallowed. "I didn't do anything. You didn't choose it," the advisor said. But... Another advisor spoke, voice uneasy. There are ancient records, rare bonds formed not by biology, but by survival choice. When one life is saved under extreme stress, protection instincts can permanently align. The Queen exhaled slowly. A protector bond, she said. But humans were never thought capable. Daniel looked down at Alira. I don't control her, he said firmly, and I won't. Alira looked up at him. I know. That answer unsettled the room more than anything else. News of the failed assassination spread through the palace like wildfire, and beyond it, foreign observers transmitted emergency reports. Intelligence agencies recalculated threat assessments. One truth became unavoidable. Humans did not need superior weapons to be dangerous. They only needed a reason. That night, the Queen stood alone on her balcony, watching the city lights. Her chief advisor joined her. This changes everything, he said. Yes, the Queen replied. It already has. Inside the palace, Alira slept peacefully for the first time in many cycles, and Daniel sat outside her door, silent and alert, not because he was ordered to, but because he chose to. Morning light spread across the palace in slow waves of gold and blue. It should have been peaceful. It was not. Across the empire, messages flashed through secure channels. Foreign ambassadors requested emergency audiences. Military fleets adjusted positions near neutral space. Old allies asked careful questions. Old enemies asked none at all. The attempted assassination had changed the balance. Inside the palace, the High Council chamber filled again, this time under tension so thick it felt heavy. The nobles sat in curved rows, their voices sharp, their patience thin. At the center, the Queen stood, calm but unyielding. Daniel stood several steps behind her, unarmed, wearing the same simple uniform. Alira sat beside the Queen, her wings folded, her posture straighter than before. She was still small, but something about her presence felt stronger. A tall noble rose first. His voice echoed. This bond is dangerous, he said. The human's presence has already drawn blood inside our walls. If we allow this to continue, we invite chaos. Another noble followed. Humans are unpredictable, emotional. They act without permission. Daniel remained silent. The Queen listened without interrupting. Finally, a military commander spoke. With respect, Your Majesty, unpredictability is exactly why humans survive. The attacker failed because the human did not hesitate. Murmurs spread. The first noble snapped back. Survival is not governance. The Queen raised a hand. The question before us, she said, is not whether humans are dangerous. It is whether we are wise enough to understand a different kind of strength. She turned slightly, addressing the room. For generations, this empire has valued control, obedience, order. We believed these traits created stability. Her gaze hardened. And yet, a single act of compassion by an outsider prevented a war we never knew was coming. Silence followed. Alira stood. Gasps filled the chamber. She rarely spoke here. I was afraid, she said softly. I was alone. Everyone powerful decided I was not worth the risk. She looked around at the nobles, not accusing, only honest. He chose me, she continued, not because I was royal, not because it was safe, but because I was scared. Her voice did not shake. When the attacker came, she added, he did not protect me because of orders. He did not wait for permission. He did not ask what it would cost him. She looked at her mother. He just stepped in front of me. The chamber was quiet. A foreign ambassador rose slowly. If this bond spreads, he said carefully. It could destabilize the galaxy. Humans forming such attachments could override treaties, borders, command structures. Daniel finally spoke. Respectfully, he said, we already do. All eyes turned to him. We don't fight for flags, Daniel continued. We fight for people. When systems fail. When orders are wrong. When someone is about to be lost. He looked directly at the ambassador. That's not instability. That's responsibility. The Queen nodded once. An aide hurried in. Pale. Your Majesty, she said, long-range scans confirm movement. The Varric Coalition has mobilized ships near our border. They are demanding the human be surrendered. Anger flared instantly. They dare? They test us? The Queen's jaw tightened. The Varric Coalition was powerful, ancient, ruthless. They had long feared human unpredictability, and now saw proof. They believe removing the human will restore order, the aide added. Daniel exhaled slowly. Then they don't understand humans. Elira looked up at him. They will come, won't they? Yes, Daniel said honestly. But not for you. The Queen turned sharply. You think this is about you alone? Daniel met her gaze. It's about what I represent. She studied him, then turned to the council. Prepare the defense fleet, she said. But do not fire unless fired upon. The general stiffened. Your Majesty, that shows weakness. No, the Queen replied. It shows confidence. She turned to Daniel. Lieutenant Reyes, she said, will you stand before the Varric envoys? Daniel blinked. Me? They expect a monster, the Queen said. Let them see a human. The meeting with the Varric took place in the outer diplomatic ring. No weapons were allowed. Fleets waited in silence beyond sensor range. The Varric envoys were tall, armored, their eyes cold. You shelter a destabilizing element, their leader said. Release him, and balance will return. Daniel stepped forward calmly. You tried balance, he said. It failed. The envoy sneered. Human arrogance. Daniel shook his head. Human honesty. He looked around the chamber. You fear us because we don't fit your models, he continued. Because we don't always choose the option with the highest survival odds. Sometimes we choose the one that saves someone who matters. The envoy leaned closer. And if that choice starts wars? Daniel answered without hesitation. Then we'll stand and face them. Something shifted. Not fear. Recognition. You would fight an empire for one child? The envoy asked. Daniel nodded. Yes. The Varric envoys withdrew to confer. Hours passed. Finally, their leader returned. We will not attack, he said. But we will watch. The threat faded, not defeated by force, but by certainty. Back in the palace, the Queen stood beside Elira on the balcony. You chose change, the Queen said quietly. Elira nodded. So did you. The Queen smiled faintly. Perhaps. Below them, humans and aliens moved together, guards speaking with soldiers, advisors with diplomats. Old lines blurred. Inside the palace, records were being rewritten, not erased, but corrected. And across the galaxy, a new understanding began to spread. Humans were not weak. They were dangerous in a different way. Because once they chose someone to protect, they did not let go.